G'day guys, Ross up here on the roof next to my evaporative air conditioning unit. Now I know what you're thinking, what a sexy looking shirt. What's in it's alright too, eh? Thanks for looking. While there are middle-aged men roaming the earth, Hawaiian shirts will never go out of fashion, I'm just saying. Now look, I'm not talking about my shirt, I want to talk about an evaporative air conditioner. Let's talk about how an evaporative system works. Now this is a Bonaire evaporative, it's a fairly big unit. The newer ones tend to be a bit shorter. And what it has is 4 sides, each one of which can be taken off. And I've got the top one here, just sitting up here. So this would normally sit right in there. And you can see there's quite big gaps. These days they tend to be a smaller gap because what happens is little birds get in and they peck away at the cellulose and they use it for building their nests. Next minute you've got holes, and instead of the water going into your cellulose, it's actually been sucked by the fan over into the air intake, which is not a good thing. So what I have normally, and I've got it here, is bird netting. And that bird netting sits over the whole thing, and I tie it at the bottom. Okay, so I've just got it sitting there at the moment. And you can just lift them out, and they come out on all 4 sides. And what they've got in them is a cellulose pad, and it's held in by just 6 bits of plastic that push through, and on the other side just a washer that gets pushed on. You can replace these yourself. You can go down and buy a set of pads, and you can also buy a bag of these connectors. So you take this off, you put the new one on, you push a connector right through the pad, you put a washer on, you do that 6 times. There's no particular place to do it, you just got to push them through, and you've got a new set of pads. Why pay someone else to do that for you? So, oh, here we go. Okay, so there's 4 of these, 1 on either side, and in essence what happens is we've got a tap down here, water comes up, there's a tap, so I turn it on in summer and I turn it off at the end of summer. There's no point having a system pressurized all year round when you're not using it. That tap goes via a little pipe to a solenoid. I'll show you that in a second. When the solenoid opens, when I turn the system on, it lets water flood up into this sump. The pump on the other side will then pump water up, and it'll flood down right along all 4 sides, and it'll drop down all the way along this pad, and this pad will get soaking wet. Okay, so you've got 4 soaking wet pads. They're all wet, and then this big fan here, whopping great big fan, is going to draw air in through the pads. Because they're wet, they're going to cool through the process of evaporation, and it's going to push that air down into your house. Now these are very cheap to run. They're much cheaper than a reverse cycle system. They use fresh air from outside and they push it into your house. So if you have one of these systems, evaporative systems, you have to open the windows. I've been to a place where they said, oh, this system doesn't work, and every door and window was shut. I said, well, you're trying to push a whole lot of air into a house and it's got nowhere to go. So you've got to open the windows, about yay far, open them around the place, and air will come in and it'll push out the windows. And you'll notice downstairs when we have a look that the vents for these are as far away from the windows as they can get. So normally they're on the inside of a room, and the air will go all the way across the room to the window, so it does the maximum amount of cooling. Now, we'll put this up out of the way. I can just sit up there. As you can see, this one's off it as well. So let's take a little bit of a closer look. I'll take the phone out of its cradle. Okay, let's go underneath here. Now what we can see is we've got our tap. The tap has just got a hose. Now I had to replace that hose a few years back. It was leaking. I think it cost me $10 for a new one at the hardware store. I took it off, did it myself. Just a few winds of plumber's tape either side. Really simple do-it-yourself job. Down there, if I can zoom in a little bit, we've got what's called a solenoid. Now, it's electrically controlled. There's a cable here at the end, and that goes up into the PCB, or the printed circuit board. It's an electromagnetic switch, basically. So there's water on this side. It's closed, the gate's closed. As soon as you energize it, the electromagnet on the other side will pull it open instantly and water will flood through. Really, really simple process. It can go wrong, but usually these are pretty bulletproof. Now this one has a pneumatic tube leaving it. I'll explain that in a minute. The new ones don't. Okay, now we'll just go up to the top here. We'll zoom back out. Water is then going to flood up into here, and we've got a float valve. It'll flood up to the point where the valve comes up like that, and it'll shut the water off, so no more water will come in. At that point, our pump, which is that pump right there, will start up, and it will push water up that hose. That'll go around all four sides. You can see up here, can you see all those holes? There we go, all these different holes. Water will come out each one of those, all along the top of the pads. The pads will get soaking wet. And then that big fan there will spin, and it'll suck that air down into the house, or blow the air down into the house, where it'll come out in the bottom. Now over here, we've got an overflow. If the water gets too high, it'll just go out there, and then straight down onto the gutter. We've also got a dump valve, which is right here, which has died after 27 years. It went out in sympathy with the motor, which I replaced yesterday. I'm going to have to get a new one. There's a workaround for that at the moment, but it does mean when this thing fills up, this thing is trying to just release all the water instead of not releasing the water. The dump valve is supposed to work when you turn the system off. It dumps all the water. You don't want water sitting in these because you don't want mosquitoes and you don't want bacteria building up. It's also usually operates every 2 to 4 hours. If you're running these things for a long time, it'll dump all the water and refill, which only takes a few minutes. And the pads will stay wet for those few minutes, so you're not losing anything. But that just means you're not getting a build-up of bacteria and stuff in this system. So look, that's the system up top. We'll take a look down, and I'll show you underneath exactly how it works. But what I'll do at the moment, I'm actually going to turn it on. Now this is a wireless system. You can actually see that's a wireless receiver up here. I'll turn the unit on. There we go. That was a solenoid opening, and you can see now that water is starting to flood into the system. All right, it's going to slowly fill up the sump. So this is one of the reasons when you start one of these units up, you never start it on high. What's the point? If this fan's going on high, all it's going to do is be sucking air through dry pads. So it's going to actually make the house hotter because it's going to suck in hot air. It's not going to cool at all. Now this system will cool as much as 10 degrees. So if it's a 35 degree day, the air should be about 25 Celsius. If it's a 45 degree day, well, you're still going to get 35 degree air in there. And of course, if you're in a really humid air environment, these things don't work very well at all. So they're really, really good for dry environments. Hear that noise? That's the pump trying to prime. And once it primes, there you go, it'll start pumping that up. And in a minute, we should see some action. Like that. And there's a fan going. Okay, so the fan's going. It's only going really low. Like I said, I've started it on 1 bar. No point going any quicker than that because the pads, there's no water coming out. It takes a few minutes. And you can see here down here, the water is getting slowly higher. And here we go. You can see that water is starting. It's starting to fall, and it will slowly move its way across. Okay, you get the idea. Now I'm going to turn this off in a second because there's no fan pads here. What'll happen is if the fan's on low at the moment, it's not a big problem, but if that water starts going across, it's going to start hitting the motor and being pushed down into the post, which we don't want. Right, you get the idea. Okay. And below this, we've got a big metal box called a post that goes into the ceiling. And in the ceiling, you've got all your ducting, and the ducting goes out to all your different rooms. And I'll show you those. We'll go downstairs and have a look. So that's the system. Pretty straightforward. Geez, it got dark awful quick. Ooh. We're up in the ceiling now, and I'm going to take a look at components number 2, which is the post that goes through the roof. and number 3, which is the ducting that's scattered throughout your ceiling. Turn this around, we'll take a gander. Okay, not great lighting, I've only got one torch, but you can see there that I've got a metal, basically a metal box, and it's attached to the ceiling, attached to the rafters there. Now, it's a similar process whether it's a colorbond roof or whether it's tiles. That metal post sticks up, and that's what the system on top is attached to. Underneath that, you have this ducting. Now, this is silver ducting, it's insulated, and this has all been calculated by the people who installed it. So you've got some coming off here. There we go. And there's a couple of T-pieces, and that's going off to various rooms. We can see an example just here. So there's a big piece coming in from the right, and it splits. That one goes down to a bedroom, and this one comes straight back here and goes down into the kitchen. All this is a piece of plastic, and the ducting literally just tapes onto it with silver tape. You'll notice that there's no gates on this. There's no electronics, there's no gates. That's because evaporative air conditioners are not normally zoned. It's all or nothing most of the time. You can zone them by simply closing the vents in each room and closing the windows, and that pretty much means air won't go into that room. Reverse cycle are often zoned, so you can turn rooms on and off. The evaporatives are not normally zoned, they're just straight through all the way. So that's what this is. You've got the larger and the smaller diameter ducts, and those ducts go down here. See if we can get a better view. This is the top end, right in there, of the vent, and in a minute, you can see the vent's just held onto the top of the plaster by a clip. There'll be 4 of those. We'll go downstairs and have a look at those from the other side. Now I'll get out of the ceiling, somewhere over there. Now we're down inside the house. This is in a spare room, and we can see that that is the vent. Now it's getting a little bit yellowed. That's just age. It's 26, 27 years old. You can buy new vents. You can take the 4, in fact I'll just zoom out a little bit. We can take these out. They just sit in there like that. We can take them out, we can move them around. At the moment, I've got 2 facing to the right, they're facing a wall. One's to the left, that's facing a wall. And the one furthest away from us is actually facing back over my head towards the window. So you can move the air around as you see fit, and you can open and close those vents just by doing that. Okay, so it's pretty easy, and they're all replaceable. They're not very expensive. Now that sits on the opposite side to the window. So the idea is the cold air blows in towards the door and moves straight across the room to the window, and that's how they operate. So pretty straightforward. And that's the 4 components of an evaporative air conditioning system. So the first one is the box at the top with all of the water delivery, the fan, the PCB, the drain, the whole bit. The second part is a post that goes through your roof and that the top box sits on. The third part are your ducts that tape into that box and go to various rooms throughout the house. And the fourth part are your vents, which you can move around, open and close as necessary. Now on full, this system will replace all the air in my house every 2 minutes. So of course, when you've got a system like this, you must open windows. If you don't do that, you're trying to pressurize a house, and it's just not going to work. This is about a 1 kilowatt system. That the motor's 950 watts, plus you've got a pump, the pumping a bit of water. That's the only 2 things you've got running. So just over a kilowatt per hour. Compare that to a reverse cycle system that's pushing between 3 and 7 kilowatts of electricity down the line. This is a much cheaper option, but it's not a cheap option in really, really hot weather or where you're in a really humid area like tropical. These things don't do much because the air's already wet outside, so putting them through cooling pads doesn't do much at all. That's when you want a reverse cycle system. All right, guys, thanks for your time as always, and until next time, happy fixing, stay cool. See ya.